As we commemorate the 4th of July, and many people, what does the 4th of July mean today? There are two things. We're looking at sentencing in America. We're looking at what happens to those who are incarcerated and how are they treated. And so I want you to hear the story of a young man who spent 22 years in solitary confinement, Anthony Gay. I want you to hear his story and then hear what he is asking us to do to end this policy of solitary confinement in prisons all across the nation. Thank you for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're an activist from Rock Island, Illinois. Tell the audience a little bit about your story. How did you come to be arrested and incarcerated?
First of all, my name is Anthony Gay. In 1994, I was arrested for a street fight where a guy lost $1 in a hat. I was accused of aggravated battery and robbery. I was informed that the aggravated battery was a class 1 and the robbery was a class 3. I was thinking, I don't want to face 4 to 15 years for a street fight. So they told me if I plead guilty to the robbery, they'll dismiss the aggravated battery. So I pleaded guilty to the robbery and they gave me 4 years probation. Well, come to find out, aggravated battery is not a class 1 and robbery is not a class 3. Aggravated battery is a class 3 and robbery is a class 2. So basically they tricked me to plead guilty to the higher offense. Well, anyway, 4 days after I was released, I was driving without a license and my probation was revoked and I was sentenced to prison. There was a guy that I had previously had a fight with in Shawnee. I was on my way to the shower. I think I had been in Menard like 2 or 3 weeks. I was on my way to the shower and he comes running out at me and he swings. Now I grew up wrestling. So when he swung at me, I ducked and hit him with a double leg takedown. But even the police response to just that, like there was no weapons involved or anything, was like bizarre or outrageous because they shot a gun off. The officers ran, they beat me up, maced me. And then that's when I was taken up solitary. Now at the time, I had no idea that I was going to end up spending 22 consecutive years in a cell that was psychologically darkening the inside of a cow. So
wait, back up. You spent how long in solitary?
22 years.
22 consecutive years.
22 consecutive years.
So now when you say solitary, explain to the audience, because many people don't know what solitary confinement looks like versus being incarcerated.
Solitary confinement, it looks like you're trapped in I was trapped in a cell smaller than a gas station bathroom, smaller than a dirty gas station bathroom. I was trapped in a cell pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, occasionally I would get to go outside to what we call a dog cage to like walk around, whatnot. But outside of that, I was pretty much trapped in the cell 24 hours a day.
So they brought you food and everything in that solitary confinement?
Right. They would feed me through what we call a chuck hole, a little small space, and slide the food tray through that. So I wouldn't go to the chow hall to eat, wasn't able to engage in any educational programs, wasn't allowed to go to a gym to work out, exercise, wasn't allowed to go in a big yard with other people and around people. So pretty much I was deprived of social stimulation and human contact. The only way I would be able to receive social stimulation and human contact was when I engaged in not superficial, but horrific self-mutilation. Now, I remember when I first started out, I started out scratching on myself. And what happened was in the Supermax, there are like 10 cells. There's 5 on the bottom and there's 5 on the top. At one point, I was on the wing with a guy and he used to horrifically self-mutilate himself. Now, this is a Supermax. So it kind of like, it shook me to see their response because I'm thinking this is a Supermax. So every time he cut himself, they're called it's called a code 3, an emergency response. And the nurses, the staff, they'll come running at the speed of light. And to me, they were showing him the most care and compassion that I probably ever seen. But it was as a result of him cutting on himself. So what I did, I thought because I was isolated, I was alone, and it was making me depressed, right? I felt like, like when you was a little kid and they used to play kickball and you'll get grounded and you'll be looking out the window watching all the kids playing kickball and you're not allowed to play, and it makes you feel depressed. That's how I was feeling. So I'm thinking, well, maybe if I do this, people will care about me too. So I started out, I would scratch myself and it would hurt so bad. And they'll come and they'll look and they'll laugh at me like, that's not nothing, and give me a little ointment and go on about their way, right? I came to realize that I had to do it better, which is ironic because it's really doing it worse, right? So I started doing it more and more and more. And then it became like a conditioned response to where it became a coping mechanism. So, you know, like when you talk about physical pain is a part of our nervous system. So it's basically a feedback mechanism to inform us something is wrong. Well, in there, for me, it flipped. The switch flipped to where it became a coping mechanism because the psychological pain became so profound and so deep that I could not tolerate it. But I developed a high tolerance for pain to where I started cutting my neck, my arms, my legs, my thighs. Now they're running at the speed of light. They're showing me care and compassion, making me feel alive. And these were only moments. And it was only in these moments, we're talking 22 years, that I felt like a human. But the moments were fleeting.
For 22 years, you would mutilate yourself to get this response. How did you finally get out?
What they would do is, instead of coming to realize that this guy needs help, we need to get this guy out this unstable environment, put him in a stable environment where he can have a sense of humanity and not appreciating that this is a crime against humanity, that this is domestic terror.
Right.
They would up the ante.
It's torture.
I went to trial, I lost like 80 times. Well, at the attorneys that were representing me were out of Fourth Appellate Office, Appellate Defender Office in Springfield. Well, these people are overworked and understaffed, so they'll just look for any little issue, maybe one issue, and do a cursory, hasty little brief, and then you will lose.
Right.
I knew what was happening to me was wrong, and I knew what was happening to people around me was wrong. So I got into my head that I can't stop. I can't give up, even while I was hurting myself and I was in extreme pain. So I just kept fighting and fighting. And I believed in my heart, because I believe in God, right? That somewhere, some way, God would give me an opportunity to turn this problem into an opportunity to help other people and to help myself. I was learning about the law, about civil rights and things of that sort, right? So I came to realize that under Section 1983, not only can you be compensated for what happens to you, it's an opportunity to make the public aware. You know, Washington Post, they like to always say that democracy dies in darkness. Well, solitary confinement is darkness and no one can hear your voice. But through Section 1983, the public is compelled to hear your voice because you're filing a lawsuit about your conditions of confinement. Because of Jennifer and Scott came along and helped me, the publicity, many different factors, right? God using people to serve his purpose. That's bigger than me, right? So I end up getting a reduction, end up getting out.
I thank you for taking the time to share your story, because I think your story is the context for the end to what I consider to be a violation of the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution. Cruel and unusual and inhumane punishment that many prisoners in our state and federal penitentiaries across the country face if they are placed in solitary confinement. And so, Anthony, we have two people that are going to join us, Andrina Logan and Pablo Mendoza, who are activists who are going to help really take this to the next level. I mean, this is something that no human should have had to endure. And your case at best was a minor offense. 20 years of your life have been in the penal system, and 22 years in solitary confinement.
I did 24 years in the system. I did 22 of them in solitary confinement.
I mean, that's the fact that you are able to articulate is by the grace of God. Pablo, okay, what does Parole Illinois do?
Parole Illinois is advocating to bring back the parole system to Illinois. The parole system was abolished in 1978 when we went from indeterminate sentencing to determinate sentencing. It was abolished on racial principles. Individuals of color were not getting paroled as much as the white population. And so they did away with the parole system and brought in determinate sentences where after 1978, people would serve 50% of their time. Thereafter started the tough on crime narrative through political means, and we continue to push for extended sentencing, truth in sentencing, and this just created a over sentencing amongst individuals where there are people serving de facto life sentences under the guise of armed robbery and several other felonies. But basically, we're trying to return back to a time when we were less messed up in our system than we are now. And we're trying to give people the opportunity to present their cases, to address some errors in our system, being convicted, whether you're guilty or not, but also extreme over sentencing and just correcting yourself, right? So taking into account that the Illinois Constitution demands that sentencing be put forth and in the interest of returning the individual to a society. And that's kind of what we're doing with Parole Illinois.
Okay, we have also an intern with Rainbow Push, Jenna Hoskins, who has been doing some research on prison reform and prison issues. And we'll be working with Anthony and his team to really look at how we deal with two things, 1983 and putting an end to this solitary confinement. Tell everyone a little bit about the paper that you have you started working on in your project for the summer that you're with us.
I researched into the prison system and incarceration during my time this year at school. I worked with Parole Illinois and Dr. Sherry Stone Mediatore as we were using a paper about the correlation between race and sentencing. And then I also was going through like talking to some incarcerated people in the prisons and just getting their views on it. And so then here at Rainbow Push, me and Reverend Wilson have been working with Anthony and trying to, put the academia side into the public policy side and create change in some way, because I mean, you can do so much with statistics. And I think that's the main issue that we have when it comes to prison reform, is that there are statistics, but we're not humanizing these statistics a lot of the times. And so when you see people like Pablo, Andrina, and Anthony here, who all have their own stories related to this topic and issue, then we're humanizing, you're putting a face to the name and not just saying statistics all the time.
So Anthony, this discussion is not going to end this Saturday, which is July the 3rd. We want to make sure that we kick off a national movement. There are people like you who are serving time, even as we speak, in solitary confinement.
The whole thing is solitary confinement. There is no lesser term than domestic terrorism. It's a crime against humanity, and it has to be stopped. It's despicable, it's horrible, and it's wrong, and it goes against our democracy. So it needs to be stopped.
And the fact that Anthony is able to communicate at all is a miracle. He is a living miracle. And so, Anthony, we thank you for your witness and for your faithfulness. And we're going to help you make this a national priority. Elimination of solitary confinement. We're going to work with Parole Illinois. We're going to talk to the Sentencing Project, ACLU, and Northwestern to make this issue across the nation. This is a public policy issue of our day. There's too many young people, young males in particular, but a growing number, we discovered in our research, of women who are having this issue with solitary confinement. I want to thank all of you for the time you've shared. Anthony, you're the brightest person I know. We're going to be preaching in a minute if you're not already.